Now, a historic day in Washington and also Havana, the U.S. and Cuba restoring full diplomatic relations after more than half a century. The Cuban flag being raised today above the country's embassy in Washington, D.C., but maybe more symbolic than anything else. Bloomberg's Willem Marx is live for us in Washington, D.C. Willem, I'm going to speak a little bit loudly because I know it's quite loud where you are. Tell us about today's ceremony. What do they signify?
Right, so just behind me you've got the interest section that transformed at midnight last night into a full-fledged embassy. Originally it had been part since 1977 of the Swiss embassy here in Washington. It's now a full-fledged embassy, and as you can probably hear behind me, there's a huge amount of activity. Hundreds of guests have been arriving over the last couple of hours here. A band is striking up, and they're probably about to start raising the Cuban flag here for the first time in more than 50 years. It's clearly a very historic moment for both these two countries, and we'll see this flag going up any moment now, I should think.
Willem, a historic moment, an exciting moment. Let's listen in for a second. Looking at live video of the Cuban flag being hoisted outside the Cuban embassy in Washington, D.C. for the first time since 1961. A truly historic day. Diplomatic ties between the United States and Cuba being restored, being normalized for the first time again since 1961. Our correspondent, Bloomberg's Willem Mark, is on the ground in Washington. Willem, I know it's noisy where you are, but if you can hear me, so we're restoring diplomatic ties. Explain for our viewers what the economic relationship now is like between the U.S. and Cuba. How many restrictions are still in place?
Well, there's a number of outstanding issues, of course, Olivia. Down in Havana today, U.S. diplomats are now, in theory, able to roam the island of Cuba at will. They no longer have to ask permission. That's going to make a huge difference to their job. Cuban citizens down there will be allowed to enter the U.S. embassy, I should say, in Havana without having to register their name with the Cuban authorities. That will also make a big difference. There are some areas of agreement, both the Obama administration and the Castro government in Cuba wishing for the trade embargo to be lifted. That will rely on a Republican Congress and may not happen anytime soon. We've heard from people like Senator Marco Rubio, saying that, he's not even going to approve an ambassador if President Obama tries to appoint one. So there will be difficulties there. In terms of some of the other outstanding issues, the U.S. State Department is saying that they're starting to cooperate on law enforcement when it comes to fugitives. They're looking at coordination on health issues. They're talking about modernization of telecommunications down in Cuba. But, you know, one of the big points of disagreement is over Guantanamo Bay. The U.S. insisting that the treaty governing the control of Guantanamo Bay will continue to hold, and the Cubans demanding, in fact, that Guantanamo Bay is handed back to them at some point in the near future.